This is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name's Andrew Jones and with me today is
Sarah Bolt.
How you doing, Sarah?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew. And how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Saw some wet stuff out the sky today.
I know, that was a bit of a luxury, wasn't it?
Well, it was, especially when I then spoke to a client just north of Bristol and said, do you get any of that rain we had today? Because I'll be honest, anyone listening, we had probably a good hour, if not more, of reasonable rain today. And he's like, nope. And you're like, oh, okay. But it's a bit of a funny one at the moment, isn't there? Because, I mean, there's maize being harvested because it's either ready or it's dying off. Or
yeah, I can't remember maize being harvested in August ever before.
No, exactly. And yet I was at a trial yesterday of some maize being grown with some runner beans. Really interested to see where that goes. But that was probably 3 weeks away. And I've seen some others today that I'd say is probably the same, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's. I guess we've all had different amounts of rain, and some went in quite early, didn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, I'm just thinking it must be that time of year for women in dairy again, isn't it, Sarah? The conference.
Do you know we're only 3 weeks away? So it's all exciting. We've got a great lineup of speakers. I won't start mentioning them because no doubt I'll forget a few, and that will be awful. So do pop along to the website and take a look. But great lineup.
Where's it being held this year?
So it's up at Stoneleigh, just at Chester Grange, just outside Stoneleigh.
So. Yeah. So well, that should be a fun and interesting couple of days for you when that gets going again.
Definitely. It's always great to be surrounded by some inspirational people.
Oh, there's plenty of them around, definitely, aren't there? Plenty of them around. Anyway, today is, well, let's be blunt about it. I wasn't going to say it, but I nerded out a little bit with this one, as Sarah, I'm sure, will completely agree. We had a really interesting talk on this one. So we've got to talk about epigenetics, which I find absolutely fascinating. And I definitely learned a lot from this one. And I know once or twice you just had to pull it back a little bit, didn't you, Sarah, to rein it in?
I do remember having to rein you both in a couple of times. So bringing this back to the farm or, those sorts of watch out for them.
So I'll be honest, I really enjoyed it. And I guess it's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is things I get to learn. And yeah, it was just something really good. So let's go and enjoy it. So today's podcast is all about epigenetics. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer completely independent dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Chewing the Cud Limited now offers first aid training from a registered first aid at work trainer and experienced minor injuries practitioner. For more details, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on training@chewingthecud.com. Hello, I'm Andrew Jones.
And I'm Sarah Bolt.
And welcome to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry.
Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else. We have topics and episodes that will interest you.
We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics.
We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently?
Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise.
Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform.
Sign up to our website, www.chewingthecud.com, for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode.
And links to our socials, including Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast. All one word, and remember, no G.
Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com.
If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome back to Tune the Cud podcast. And today we're going to talk about epigenetics. And our guest today is Ian Garner, who is head of R&D at Antler Bio. Good day to you, Ian.
Great day to you, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. So Ian is talking to us because one of his colleagues heard my, not flippant, but my little remark when we were talking about the immunology with Connor and Rachel. And I said, it'd be really good to do something about epigenetics. And your colleague Andy reached out, didn't he, via LinkedIn, and we got talking, and here we are today. So before we get into what epigenetics are, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Ian, and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. So it's quite a long time ago now, but I went to Nottingham University to study nutrition. It was never my plan. I wanted to be a badminton player. I never quite reached the levels to play for England.
Human nutrition,
human, yeah, and some animal, but
okay.
mainly human nutrition. I got really interested during around the time I was 17, 18, where when I played badminton, I realized my diet could be improved, and as I improved that, I became a lot better at badminton. I had a lot more energy, and I became fascinated by that. And then I went on so I studied nutrition at Nottingham for 3 years, and then I also did a master's in immunology. And throughout that time, there was a lot of talk and lectures on gene expression, genetics, and then epigenetics. And I got really interested in what epigenetics is. So then I ended up doing a PhD in the subject at UCL in human, a rare lung disease in human called IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Had a great time at UCL, and then I moved to Imperial and studied epigenetics again, but looking at ovarian and pancreatic cancer. So I did that for 5 years. And then COVID hit, as all stories seem to start.
These days, doesn't it? Yeah.
I was looking for the next opportunity. I got a really good offer from quite a prestigious UK genomics group, and then I got a random call from a recruiter. Got really interested in what he had to say about Antler Bio. Met Maria, the CEO, who's a great person, great lady, and the rest is history. I ended up taking this path, and here we are today. And we'll talk a little bit. I mean, you obviously work for Antler Bio, but you now have a product, I think it's just coming on the market. Is it EpiHerd? But we'll talk about that a little bit as this podcast goes on. But I guess we ought to talk a little bit about the difference between phenotype, genotype, and epigenetics. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, obviously, we spoke a little bit with Stuart and Helen, and we talked about genotype and phenotype there. So genotype is let me get this right, is the potential, whereas phenotype is actually what they express. That's correct, isn't it? Yep.
And then epigenetics, though, and this is where I get really fascinated by this, and I don't know a huge amount about it at all, but epigenetics is how how the nutrition can potentially express those genetics and how you turn different genes on and off, isn't it? And I mean, I guess the two examples that always absolutely fascinate me is I know Georgina and Laura from Trough, particularly when they're talking about calves, talk about how, the queen bee is genetically exactly the same as her female worker bees, but it's just the fact that the queens are fed the royal jelly, and that's what turns them into queens. Or the other one that fascinates me is how if you're a woman or a cow or whatever it happens to be, and I'm not trying to make comparisons, but ultimately we're all the same. What, as a pregnant individual, what you eat, if you are carrying a female fetus, doesn't just affect that fetus, but also the eggs that fetus is carrying. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah. There's many things there, but yes, epigenetics is, if you define epigenetics, it's essentially another layer of data. It's on top of genetics. Epi means above, on. So you have your genetics, your version, your potential, and you have then epigenetics. Now, both genetics and epigenetics can regulate gene expression.
Yep.
It's just, genetics is more static. You can think of genetics as that's what you have. That's your version of your gene. Epigenetics can be modified by environment, diet, light, stress.
Well, I was going to say, the example I think of, it's just come back to me, and I cannot remember the two bulls' names, but there was a couple of bulls in Canada, must be probably 20 years ago now, and they were from a split embryo, so they were considered to be genetically identical, and when they got their proof, they were put together and they became number one in Canada. And I think since then, they've decided, no, it wasn't the case, because one brother was definitely better than the other, and in that instance, I guess it must have been epigenetics that came into it. The environment, they were a flush, they were a split embryo, obviously put into different recips, etc. And those genes express slightly differently, even though they were genetically identical. And I certainly know since then, that's the only time since then, if that happens again, that they're separate proofs on those bulls.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have two very genetically similar animals, but they can have very different phenotypes. They can have, one could be very healthy, one could make a lot of milk, the other the opposite. And although you might think you've got the best versions of genes into those animals, you may have, but they might not be expressing those genes. And that is where epigenetics can come in. You can turn on and off genes through epigenetics.
How easy is it then to turn these genetics on and off? Because I always thought it was what happened in utero is what did it, but
yeah, so it can be simple things that you might not really think about, like, let's say light, that can control a bunch of genes. So circadian rhythm.
wow.
You can have stress. If you're stressed, that can activate certain pathways that then turn on and off genes. If you eat certain things more than others, so let's say you have more vitamin B, more folate, more choline in your diet, you'll have more methyl donors. And methylation can turn on, and depending on where methylation is in the gene, it can either turn it off or turn it on. So there's lots of different levels of control there. And there's pretty much anything in your environment or diet you can think of will have an effect on gene expression.
Right. Okay, because I got to be honest with you, my understanding was it was just in, like say, in utero. So what you're telling us is us today, depending on the light or depending on, well, you could argue how much ultra processed food you eat or whatever could then change what genes do or don't, and therefore what you do or don't crave, or how you then go forward.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it can be you can link it back in utero. So what your mum ate, what your grandmother ate, that can or what their environment was like. If it was a very stressful time, very stressful area, high pollution levels, just the diet not so good back then, that can have a lasting impact on your health. So it isn't just about what you do. It is about your history, your family history of what they've done. Smoking, for example, is a classic one where, if you smoked during pregnancy, you can induce a lot of epigenetic changes that then go on to affect the baby born.
I was just about to say, I guess thalidomide would probably be another one, wouldn't it? Because that they said was, it's only going to affect that generation, but it's completely changed the way those genes are expressed, hasn't it? And then children with thalidomide, their children are showing the same.
I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but that's probably targeting genetics as well. That probably caused a lot of mutations. But yes, it probably did affect epigenetics. Yeah. It's never one or the. There are some cases where diseases are caused by a single point mutation. It's more of a combination of epigenetics and genetics work together. You can regulate gene expression. That's the bottom line is a gene expressed at the right time? Is it on and off at the right time? That can be through multiple mechanisms, genetics and epigenetics. But yeah.
So going back to basics, what does this mean to farmers? And, we've got our heads around genetics, we've got our heads around, that side of things. How do we now start thinking about epigenetics, and what does that mean? What can we do? What should we be doing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, genetics is a big thing, obviously, in farming. There's a lot of talk when you try and breed what you think is the best genetics into your herd. Now that's good. That can help, but it's not a definitive that it's going to have a positive outcome. You've potentially bred in the best or a very good version of a gene, but it doesn't mean you're expressing it. You can't tell if you're expressing it just because you've got that version. That's where epigenetics comes in. You could, what we do at Antler Bio is look at whether a gene is expressed or not, regardless of genetics or epigenetics. We're just looking at, is a gene expressed, yes or no? So if you think of the analogy of, say you've got two tractors, they're top of the range tractors, they're the best version of a tractor you can get. They look identical, but one works and one doesn't. If you think of epigenetics as like the fuel or the electronics, something's gone wrong there. That's kind of my analogies are not great.
You've just brought to my head, is it the image from, is it season 4 of Clarkson's Farm, where he gets all those tractors lined up and it came down to which one could get the tow hitch down quick enough or something, wasn't it? And even then he still didn't buy one of them. And yes.
It's because it didn't say Lamborghini on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, right? If you've got a Lamborghini, you've got maybe the best version of a car that you could get, perhaps. But if it doesn't have fuel, you might as well have a Nissan Micra, because it still functions as a car. No offense to Nissan Micra drivers, obviously. Very good cars.
Well, or Lamborghini, because you did say probably. Oh dear. Anyway, yes, yeah, exactly. So Sarah's right. I mean, I was getting a little bit maybe carried away because it just absolutely fascinates me, the technical side of it. But what in reality, what do we do? So if somebody wants to do this, ultimately, how do they go about finding out if their genetic potential has been reached or has been expressed, I should say? Yeah.
So if you want to look at gene expression, you look at, I mean, there's several ways of doing it, but if you want to look at all the genes, so 27,000 odd genes, you would look at doing something called RNA-seq, where you sequence the entire genome and you look at the expression of every gene. So that's at a point in time, but you basically get data that shows you how much that gene is expressed at that point in time.
So the cow's genome is completely mapped now, isn't it?
Yep.
How long does it take you to do an individual cow then, once you've got the DNA? Because in the past, that would have taken a very long time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so we extract RNA from blood. So essentially how it works, you take a blood sample.
So I was going to say, it's a blood sample, not a hair sample.
Yeah, you could do it from hair, but that poses other challenges. Blood is more of a systemic kind of look at.
And I guess potentially more risk of contamination with hair, maybe.
Yeah, you probably need a bit more hair. As protocols would be different. I mean, you can get RNA from lots of different places, saliva, blood, milk even. But yes, we take a very small blood sample, and then from that we extract RNA. And then from that we do what's called library preparation, where you basically tag all those sequences of RNA, and then it's sequenced. And then you align those sequences to the genome, the cow genome, and you see where they map. And the more that map in a certain place, the greater that gene is expressed, essentially.
Yeah, so for argument's sake, if you see more of the mapping for milk, you are more likely to see milk expressed from that animal.
Yeah, the genes that are involved in milk yield,
Yes.
for example, yeah, exactly. So we know what not all the genes, we don't know all of them, but we know a lot of genes that are involved, say, in milk yield. We look at good and poor cows, so we can say, look, these cows are making 50 kg a day, these cows are making 20 kg a day. What's the difference in gene expression? Yep. What genes are different between those cows? And then we can put those through tools called pathway analysis tools. So which cluster of genes map to certain pathways? For example, vitamin A pathways, vitamin D pathways, or stress pathways, immune pathways, etc. And from that, then we can give actionable recommendations to farmers. So we basically take that gene level data, put it through pathway analysis. It's not just that, we add in all the literature as well. So we have some tools that we've developed that takes all the knowledge basically in existence. So anything that's ever been published, we can extract that rapidly. And then, we can say, right, there's, say, 60 papers that say if you supplement with vitamin D, you're likely to increase your milk yield, for example. And we do that for a bunch of different pathways, a bunch of different recommendations. And then we add all the literature support to that. And then we say to the farmers, look, here's what your data shows.
So you're providing effectively, am I right? Is it a meta-analysis of all the...
Yeah, essentially, along with their own gene data. Data. And the great thing about it is the earlier you start, the more data you get, you build up. So you can always go back to that data, because if you think, let's say in a couple of years' time, a cow goes on to develop a problem, you've got that data from before to then say, could we actually see any gene expression pathways or patterns developing? Or was there something there that we could have said, yeah, you could have gone on to develop that? So as we get more and more data, more longitudinal data, we can start seeing that.
Okay. So let's say I've got a herd of 100 cows and I'm listening to this, or I've heard about EpiHerd. How many cows would you suggest I start with? Or do I start with my newly born heifers or my milking animals? Or where should I target? And then I guess from what you're saying, how often should I be maybe looking at some of this to see that, let's say you've made a recommendation, we follow through with it. How quickly should we then go, oh, we better follow up to make sure this is doing what it's turned on the genes that it's supposed to? And I guess ultimately, the ultimate question is, what's the cost of all of this?
Sure. So what we do at the moment is roughly 10% of a herd. Right. So we biostatistically select cows. We do that.
You do that, yeah.
So we would look at getting some of your best cows through different stages in their lactation, and some of their worst cows, again, in different stages. And then from that, then we, like I said, we take the RNA, we extract the RNA, we look at the gene expression. So we've got let's say for yield, we've got your good and poor cows. If a farmer is interested in yield, we say, right, what's turned on or off in your good cows versus your poor cows?
Taking a step back, do you guys come and take the blood, or is that just get a vet to go and take a standard blood? Or
a vet takes the blood. We don't.
You just supply whatever's...
Exactly. We supply all the kits.
Yeah.
So everything there for it. So you essentially, upon signing up, we give you a cow list on labels, tubes, a package that you can put the samples in and deliver back. It's all prepaid. So it's pretty simple. The instructions are all there for the vet. They'll be routinely taking blood. So it's, it's very simple. And then that gets delivered back to our warehouse, and then we send that off to sequence.
Yeah.
10% of the herd. What we find is, so when farms, let's say we do a lot of work in the Nordics, so a lot of work in Finland, Sweden, and with those farms, we say once a year to sequence. So we have the first sequencing. The farmers there will then make changes based on the recommendations we give them. And what we find is quite a lot of them then want to resequence after, maybe a few months after, to see,
if the change is made.
Exactly, yeah. We have lots of examples where, where that's happened. And then, some of what we call that impact capture. So when a farm makes a change, we will record what happens to the yield and other metrics. And some of we have some really cool data. We get across all our farms, a significant improvement in yield in farmers that make those changes. Some of those farms, one farm has actually doubled their milk yield, which is a bit of an outlier, but a very...
I was going to ask, well, what's your biggest change that you've seen? So one farm has doubled.
Over doubled, yeah. They're kind of our flagship farm, if you like. They're a lovely couple.
It doesn't happen to everybody.
No, it doesn't. No, that's an extreme case. We have.
Were they quite low yielding at the time? Or?
They were quite low yielding.
So there was potential there to be able to do that. You take a 10,000 litre cow and try and double that would be a lot harder than trying to double a 3,000 litre cow or whatever.
But we do have farms that are making 70, 80 kg, and they're still seeing 5 to 10% improvements. It's all kind of... we do see a bigger improvement in those lower cows to start with. There's usually probably more things going on, but the changes can be very straightforward. They don't require a lot of money. They can be very simple things. It's like the cows, like I said to you before, it's like they talk to us through their gene expression. So if you think of, a cow can't say, I don't like this diet. They might not eat so much, or you might think, it's not working so well, that for certain cows, but their gene expression might show that they're really stressed by something. They might show that actually, let's say, certain genes just aren't expressed, so they don't go on to make enzymes that break down certain substrates. For example, vitamin D. You might think you're getting enough vitamin D. You might be supplementing, you might be feeding them great food that should have plenty of vitamin D. But the data can show that actually the genes that metabolize vitamin D, they're not expressed or not expressed enough. So then it doesn't really matter how much you give vitamin D. If they can't actually break it down to its active form, then they're not getting enough. They might need a version of vitamin D that's actually already converted.
It might be available. What you're saying is that, for argument's sake, we're saying vitamin D might be available, but not in a it might be in the rumen or whatever, but it's in the cow, but it's not bioavailable. It's not being converted into a form that can be used. So it's just going to be expressed out the back end basically, and just not get used in the way that it should be being used.
Exactly. If you think in humans, some people are great at metabolizing alcohol. They don't get drunk after 10 pints, whereas someone like me will be absolutely wasted on I've got to be careful here, but maybe just a few pints perhaps. But yeah, it's very similar to that. Everyone's different. Cows are different. So what works for some cows might not work for others. We've seen a lot of just some really interesting data. Some things like seem really, really obvious, but actually, without actually having that data to show it,
yes,
you might miss it.
So, sorry, go on, Sarah.
So what sort of format do the farmers get the recommendations back in? You're saying, that it might come back, say, like this vitamin D, that they not metabolizing it, etc. So how would a farmer see that a practical report, I guess?
So we have an app. EpiHerd is a web-based app, and through that the farmer can log in. They can look at first they're hit with what's called a radar plot. It's basically metrics and their scores based on what we've studied, and then they'll get a page of recommendations in kind of a traffic light system, ones that they should think about considering first versus other ones. Because in certain places or environments, it doesn't matter. There's certain changes that will be more important, right? If
ones that perhaps have bigger impact.
Exactly, or that you need to correct first before the other ones can help. If you think if there's a lot of immune inflammatory pathways going on, then changing the lighting might not be as important as sorting out, the bedding or changing the feed or whatever. But yeah, they're given a list of recommendations that fit their farm based on that gene expression and pathway analysis. They'll be given not all the scientific literature. They'll be given a selection of the scientific literature to show studies that say have added vitamin D, that they do increase in yield, or other metrics that what we call maybe off-target effects, but beneficial. So, for example, vitamin A, several farms have had that recommendation. They've supplemented vitamin A, their yield has gone up. But also they've noted fertility's gone up, silent heat detection's gone up. The overall welfare seems to be better. So again, they get a lot of information with that. And it's never us saying, you have to do this. It is purely, this is what your data shows from your RNA, your gene expression. Here's the literature that supports that. We will be adding features in the future, very near future, of number of farms that have made this change and what the impact has been. Because I think that would be really nice to show farmers, 20 farms, 50 farms have made this change and the average increase has been X kg per cow.
Farmers like to learn from other farmers and know that it's worked for somebody else, don't they?
Yeah. I mean,
peer-to-peer is so important.
Yeah. I mean, what we had very early on, about 3 years ago, we had what we called early adopters. So the farms that, really pioneering farms that were willing to take a risk with us, I guess. And yeah, they're all still there. They're all made huge improvements. And it's just having that data behind it, I think. Yeah. And once we've, the more farms that join, the more information we get. It's like a positive feedback loop. The more farms that make certain changes, then we can see which ones are working really well, which ones are not working so well, which ones are really economically viable, which ones aren't so economically viable but do still work. For example, in Finland, choline is quite expensive. Whereas in the UK, it's not as expensive. Now, it might be that different regions have to, or might want to go certain recommendations over others because of that.
So are your recommendations purely nutritional, or do they include some environmental recommendations, like more light or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they include both environmental. So ventilation is one of them. Lighting, for example, lots of nutritional ones, lots of not just supplement. Like, it's also monitor, have a look at, say, iron levels. When those pathways come back, we can't say whether it's an iron, you need to add more iron or you need to add less iron. So things like that, that's where we fall back on the literature and then ask them to then consult with their nutritionists, their vets, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's making me think, blimey, because I mean, like, as well as doing the nutrition, obviously I do cow signals, which is trying to teach people to improve the environment, because, you know, the quote I always use at the beginning is, the best will in the world, I can give you the best diet in the world, but that'll only affect 25% of the production. It's the environment, whether it's light, space, air, water, whatever. And this, you're saying, is a different way of showing that information. You know, we know that, for argument's sake, you want 200 lux of light for 16 hours a day, but you're showing that actually by showing that what the difference, because, you know, anecdotally, I hear plenty of people say, oh yes, we've done it, we've added a litre or two of milk just by getting the light right, but you're putting it in some hard data as well that's showing this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the farms I remember very early on, we had a vitamin A, or they had pathways involved with vitamin A. So we said, look, here's all the literature that says supplementing with vitamin A will increase yield significantly. They added vitamin A, and then they resequenced about 6 months after that. And those pathways have completely disappeared between their good and poor cows. Their milk yield had gone up. So, you know, things like that is, you know, while it's a correlation, not causation, but it's showing that they made a change to vitamin A. Now there's no differences between their top and bottom cows in vitamin A pathways. Same with another example of hydration. You'd think, you know, cows make a lot of milk, they're going to need to drink a lot. And you'd think that access to water is pretty obvious. But when these pathways come up, that's what the cows are saying. Is between their good and poor cows, that's what the genes that are different between those cows are linked to. And I remember one farmer saying, like, when I saw that result, you know, these pathways in hydration were hugely significant compared with, like, the p-values or adjusted p-values were, you know, very small.
Yeah.
As in, like, there's a big difference between their good and poor cows. And when I saw that, I was a little bit like, I'm not used to this pathway being around, because I'm come from the human side of cancer research, where you look at those pathways being different. And I said to them, like, well, this is what the data says. Data doesn't lie, but you can interpret it wrong.
Yeah.
But I remember the farmer saying, no, this makes complete sense. What he's observed with his cows is, there's a matriarch cow. They're following that cow. They go to the trough. If they can't get to that trough within about 15 seconds, or when that cow turns around, they'll just think that they've had enough to drink, or they'll just follow that cow, and they're not actually drinking. And that's the beauty of this kind of data. It really does give the cows, I mean, it's again, it's probably not the best analogy, but it does give them a voice through gene expression data. So they installed more drinking troughs in a different form, like a different like different locations.
Added more water troughs, basically.
Exactly, and created in a way that didn't cause a bottleneck.
Yes, they moved it into space rather than in passageways or crossways or whatever it happens to be.
Exactly, and that might seem very logical, and it is logical, but without that data, probably wouldn't have changed anything. And they did change it, and they saw improvement. So
we were asking, and you sort of mentioned 4 and 6 months. How regularly would you recommend somebody does a follow up then to what they've done? Is it you should monitor once a year, or you should do it more regularly if you've made significant changes to start with? When you do redo it, do you do the same animals, or do you do different animals? How does that go about?
Yeah, so when we resequence, we do. It's likely that we'll do different animals. Some do overlap, but we don't always choose the same and like animals from the first time.
Yep.
And that's mainly because some of those poor animals just aren't around anymore. They were too poor, and they couldn't be kind of rescued. But some do get rescued. They do become very good animals. But we always look at the top end of the herd versus the bottom end of the herd. There is a lot of biostatistical selection algorithms that go on there. We don't just take the top ones on yield and the bottom ones on yield. There is other things that go on there. In regards to how often, with the Finnish farmers, we have once per year, but a lot of them opt to do a lot more than that every quarter or after they make a change, or if something happens with their herd that's unexpected, a lot of them will want to sequence there and then as quickly as possible to see if we could have picked up something, or is there something, what's going on, what's causing that problem.
So it's just another set of eyes on farm, really.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty of gene expression again is there's a lot that can go on with expression before a phenotype develops. So if you imagine related back to humans, when we get unwell, we display symptoms like a runny nose or a headache or a cough or whatever. But before that actually happens, our genes are changing. They're expressed at different levels in preparation or in reaction to something going on. So there's things like in cows, like Johne's disease, there's no way to detect that until it's too late. There's no way in TB before it's too late. With gene expression, we have one farm again where we saw what we believed was a signature of Johne's. Based on the literature, we saw genes expressed very highly only in that farm compared to all our other farms. We did do. We spoke to the Finnish government. They did a test to look at the mycobacterium that causes that, and they did see elevated levels of it, but not to their threshold. That would class it as Johne's, but there was an elevation, just wasn't significant. But
it was rumbling in the background, basically.
We believe so. And we have good evidence for that now. And it's certainly along those lines where gene expression could be very useful. You see that pattern going towards a direction that you might not want. That's where you can intervene before it's too late.
Looking far in the future, do you see this as something, because I believe you said that this can be done using milk samples, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you see this as maybe something that the milk recording companies might then offer through their monthly milk recording, that like now you can do quarterly Johne's testing, you might turn around and do quarterly RNA sequencing and look at your gene expression?
I think that would be very interesting to do. I mean, if I could do it, I would do it myself. I'd love to. It is quite an expensive technology still. There are more high throughput ways that you can look at panels of genes. So it could certainly be done that way. I mean, you collect the milk, you'd still need to send it off to extract the RNA. There is a little bit more technical.
But like most of these things usually get cheaper and quicker and easier. Yeah. And I guess I'm thinking 10, 20 years down the line, maybe. I don't know. I don't know where your technology is, but I'm just sort of thinking, is that ultimately do you think ultimately possible?
I think, once the sequencing machines come down in price, and they are expensive. They're expensive to get. But if you could get a tabletop machine that was, or that you could integrate into your like the robotics.
Yep.
Then yes, very much so. If you could have something that just pass the milk on, extract the RNA, sequence, that is something in the future that could be done. Yes. I mean, I like to think, and this is not possible at all, but maybe one day, everyone's got a phone pretty much, right? Everyone's glued to a phone quite a lot of the time. One day, maybe we'll be able to use our phones to just, you have the glucose tests for a lot of people with diabetes, right? Where they can monitor real time through their phone or app on their phone, their blood. Now, could we do that for RNA-seq in the future, perhaps? Could we, as humans, do that? Could we have devices on
That's starting to get a little bit Big Brother-ish to me.
Yeah. You never know. It's definitely not there yet. But if you could monitor real-time gene expression often, that could be huge, because you basically be seeing all the time what certain things do to your gene expression.
Yeah, I shouldn't have eaten that packet of crisps or whatever it is, and this is what it's done. Yeah, and another way to beat us around the head for eating the wrong thing.
Yes, I do like crisps as well.
Oh, thank God for that. I'm not the only one. Oh dear. But yes, but I mean, listening to you say there, it's I don't know, there's a point of me who's going, God, I'm feeling old now. I mean, that's maybe the wrong thing to say, but it's just, it's like we've done several other ones on new technology, and it's just the steps that potentially this could go and where it can be, and just shows that dairying, farming, but we're obviously concentrating on dairying, is not the stereotype that some people still have, that it's just full of yokels that are all, all down from the farm and, don't worry about things too much. The technology, the advancements in technology, and it's not every farm, don't get me wrong, there are still some farms that milk with parlours that are 50 years old compared to ones now putting in the latest robots. But the technology that is available and the way it can go in terms of whether it's teaching AI to detect digital dermatitis, which is one we've done in the past, and I know they're looking now at using that AI to detect lameness, and all of these things. It's just mind-blowing where this is going, and you think, well, by the time I end my career in 20 plus years time, where are we going to be with when you're likes of yourself are saying, well, actually, and you're going, milk recording just used to be, it was milk yield, fat, protein. Well, now, I start looking at fatty acids. So look at, C16, C18-1, all of those sorts of things, because they give us more information. But you're going another step again by going, well, actually, we can look at the RNA, and that is showing how those genes are expressed. And actually, by that, we make recommendations, and you can improve things another step.
Yeah, I mean, using that lameness example is a great one. You could look at a cow and see they're lame. That's too late already. You can use AI to do, you can use learning models like neural network. That's how the AI would work. You maybe take a picture, and then through machine learning methods like neural networks, they might be able to say, yep, that cow looks lame, or a little video.
Well, with that one on the digital dermatitis, they've developed it they walk through the footbath. There's a camera on it. It takes an 8-second video of that animal as it walks through, and they've taught it. Whereas you and I would see digital dermatitis at about stage 4, I think it can pick it up at like stage 1 or 2. I think it is.
Yep.
And I know they're doing the same. Well, let's be blunt. I've gone and mobility scored for them on a farm where they've got this. I mobility scored them, being that I'm a ROMS mobility scorer, and they are going to take the numbers that I said were a 2 or a 3, and they are going to take that corresponding video of the 8-second clip, and then teach it to say, well, Andrew, in this instance, and there's others who will be doing it, has said this cow is lame, and I try and say what foot it is and trying to teach it, and
yeah. I mean, that's a classic reinforced learning model where you've given the metadata, you've given the scores, and they're using that then with the video to then teach the learning model.
As I joked, I remember when we first recorded the podcast with them, I'm putting myself out of a job at this rate.
Well, yeah, maybe. I doubt it. You're always going to need that expertise, at least for now. But if you keep with that,
there's the point. For now, you just said it, isn't it? For now,
it depends. It depends how quick the AI, I guess, evolves. I mean, when you combine the power of computing, and as we get to quantum computing, I mean, this might go off topic a bit, but you get enough qubits and enough AI, then you're going to get some very interesting.
Well, I've sort of said it before, but everybody's afraid of the whole Terminator situation with AI. Well, I hate to say it, world, but the world has already been taken over by AI. You just don't realize it. It's doing it in things like the digital dermatitis detection or whatever it is. It is already there. It is already being used.
Yeah.
And obviously it's using in your product where you're going through all of that literature. It's
Yeah,
AI
exactly. Yeah.
that's
Although
getting all
we,
of that
yeah,
data and
with how we use AI, I like to think of it as very ethical, very
yes.
responsible AI use. So everything we do is validated. We have built a program that, with AI, people might think, they go on to say ChatGPT or something and type in a question.
It's probably machine learning is probably a better way to describe.
Yeah, there's a lot of we do a lot of machine learning. We've got a lot of samples, so we can do some really cool learning models that predict yield. With the AI that we do, we've actually, the classic problem with AI is what's called hallucination, where it says something that it thinks is real, but it isn't. Or it can give a very convincing answer, but it isn't actually correct. The classic example of hallucination is when you try and cite papers. It might give you the right answer, but then cite the wrong paper, the completely irrelevant
reference.
paper. So we've actually solved that problem. We do something called RAG. It's an AI method, RAG based, and with sentiment analysis. So we can take a paper, we know exactly what it says, what the sentiment of that paper is, and then we can link it. So we create our own kind of knowledge base. I was trying to tell my parents, and bear in mind my parents are in their 80s, trying to kind of explain AI. And if you imagine the dinner table, every surface on that dinner table is everything the AI has been taught. We give it, say, a placemat, and it can only look at that when it makes its recommendation. So we've already got our own knowledge base. We're not using the entire knowledge base out there that could have inconsistencies.
So
You've already taken that peer review papers and ones that have got
exactly. Yeah. So we say, this is a good paper. Let's put it in our knowledge base. Then the AI can only target that when it's making its decisions or etc. But going back to that lameness example, if people can look at a cow and it's lame. People could use AI and neural networks or learning models and say, yep, it's lame. With genetics, you can say, it's got versions of genes that might lead to lameness, but it's gene expression which can be picked up before that cow is lame, and said, look, they're expressing these genes. It's not quite at a level yet where it's going to cause chronic inflammation, but they're going that way. That's where you can intervene before that cow becomes lame.
I suppose it's no different than I know human families where usually the heart disease is in the family or cancer's in the family, or the likelihood is that, as you say, it's not purely genetic, it's the environmental as well. But the likelihood is they are more susceptible to heart disease, or they are more susceptible, in the example you're using, to lameness.
Exactly. And if you know where, the example of cancer, I mean, I studied ovarian cancer and breast cancer and pancreatic, and the classic with, say, breast cancer, if patients had a BRCA2, what was called a BRCA2, so BRCA2 is a gene. If they had a mutation in that gene, that could lead to cancer, but it also meant that they could respond well to cisplatin, a chemotherapy drug, basically platinum. And they treated a lot of women with this drug, and it can be very successful. But they also noticed people without that mutation also responding to the drug. The question was why? Well, they did the studies, and it turned out to be epigenetics. So mutations can turn off BRCA2, but methylation at the promoter in BRCA2 can also turn off BRCA2.
So it's allowing for more targeted, what's the word I'm looking for? Yes, thank you. That's it. Yeah, there's more targeted therapy to ensure that the right therapy is being used for the right reasons.
Because if you didn't look at, you could look at the gene expression and you could see whether BRCA2 was turned on or off. Now, if you did that, you might say, they might respond better, right? Rather than if you look at genetics and it was not mutated, they might say, well, you won't respond to this. But actually it's turned off through another layer of data, the epigenetics. So genetics is a very well studied area. So is epigenetics now. There's still lots we don't know about, but there are other areas that we haven't probably discovered yet, or there are other areas that are just coming out, kind of thing. There's lots of layers of control. If you think cells do anything to survive, we as humans, we would do anything to try and survive. And cancer is essentially uncontrolled cell growth. It will also do anything to survive. So there's a battle there. There are loads of layers of regulation. It's like a spider web of you have histomethylation, histone deacetylation, lysine methylation, microRNAs, G4 quadruplexes, gene expression. Like, there's so many words.
My poor brain is it's managing to struggling to keep up.
Apologies to anybody listening to this.
Yes, I have been to the pub today.
I'm going to bring it all back just one moment. So in Andrew's very long question that he asked, one of the parts of that was about the cost to farmers for doing this epigenetics. So Andrew was saying about a 100 cow herd. You were saying maybe 10% of the herd once a year.
Yep.
What sort of cost would we be looking at on farm?
Yeah, so it's about £4,000 for about 10, not 10% of your herd. If you have a 100 head herd, that would be about £4,000. Yeah.
What, for the 100 head?
As in, like, we take 10% of that.
10%. So effectively, to do 10 animals is going to cost you about four grand.
Yeah.
So that's about 400 quid an animal then.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And what kind of ROI, return on investment are we looking at? I mean, I know obviously it depends. You say you've had somebody that's complete outlier and doubled their milk yield, but on an average, what sort of return on investment are we looking at? Yeah, it's about 7%. Not 7%. 7 to 1.
7 to 1 return. Yeah. So some, in our Finnish farms, the quickest to repay is 8 days. It's taken 8 days for them to get that money back after they've made the changes. So some changes can rapidly have an effect. It could be
so it's flicking that switch and it's flicked.
Yeah. Other things might take a little bit longer to implement, but they see it over time. So we did a study on, I want to say 50, I think, off the top of my head, of our farms in Finland, where we looked at 6 months after they got their report, how had their milk improved. And the average there was, I think it was off the top of my head, 1.6 liters per cow per day. It was, again, significant. That's where we see some farms, they had 22% increase in yield up to. But yeah, most of the farms had repaid that epi herd cost in a couple of months or less.
I was going to say, how quickly are you saying that 7 to 1 return on investment is? Within a month, 6 months, a year?
Within 6 months, or so this study we did within so we looked at the moment they got their epi herd report back, and the next 6 months how their milk yield had increased, and that's basically. So
really, you're saying for a 400 cost per cow, you're potentially 7/8 to 28. You're making £2,800 for the investment of the £400.
Yes,
per cow.
Yes, exactly. Yes, 7 times 4. Yes. Maths at 9 p.m. on a. But yes, exactly. Yeah, and we have the data to show it. We're happy to show that.
And is that, I realise that the more you do it, the gains are smaller, you'd expect to be smaller then as you start to flick on certain switches and turn off different pathways and that. Is that 7 to 1 the first time, or over an average of 5, 6, 7, 8 analysis?
So we've only been going for about 4 years now. So we have farms that are on their 3rd sequencing. They are, all I can say is they're very happy. I don't know the changes from each time. Point. I do know for our farm, this one outlier. Yes, they're not doubling every time, for sure.
It's like most things, the big gains are the first time.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's kind of, if you think of it, it can be continual marginal gains that add up to a big gain, right? So we've got some of our top farms that are doing, like, we have some of the best farms in Finland. They might see 3-4% increase, but to them, that that is a huge amount when they've been static until now, kind of thing. But yeah, you can improve, and it's not just yield. We often, countless farms will come back and report, their fertility's increased. The cows seem happier, they seem healthier. There's less vets being called out. There's less issues on the farm.
And those are some of the things that are less quantifiable cost-wise is the improved health.
Exactly.
Most people just measure it purely on how much milk is in the tank, basically.
A check that's coming back in rather than those unwritten checks that never get written in the first place.
Yeah, and we have some farms where this doesn't work for every farm, but then the data. What I think maybe on some of those farms is if they hadn't had us with EpiHerd, if they hadn't made some changes, would have their milk been far worse? They might not have gone up like some of our farms, but have we prevented something by giving them, those recommendations? Have they prevented something? And that's where that data comes in really useful the earlier you do it, because we can then go back in a few years' time and say, yeah, look, your cow's actually developed this, or something happened here, and we were able to preempt, maybe not completely stop something happening, but at least help potentially.
So go on, sir.
So going back to what Andrew was saying, that maybe year on year the increments aren't as much, but actually something could happen on farm that then sets them back again. So actually it's not a case, it's worth doing it every year to know what that journey's looking like.
Yeah, I mean, we had a farm, one farm where we gave the results and they didn't take the advice, which is fine. They went against the advice. They got in an expert that said, no, you don't need to listen to this. You do it this way. And they listened to him, and their milk yield dropped massively. They got rid of him. They went back to us. They started implementing changes. They sequenced straight after that, and we saw that they had really quite low levels of immune. Their immune scores were poor. They had high inflammatory markers. It looked like chronic stress, essentially. They made changes, and then they resequenced. I think it was 4 months after that. It was November. They did the first, the resequence, and then in February they sequenced again, and their inflammation and immune scores have gone right back up. So it's, it is kind of that you could be a really good nutritionist. Like we can help basically nutritionists, any stakeholders, the farmers, nutritionists, whatever, vets, for example. But it's that data. It's that data that supports what we're saying. We have that data to say, yeah, look, here it is. This is what it's saying. Use it to your advantage. We're not trying to compete. We're just trying to help. We can help.
It's just another tool in the toolbox, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's not to replace anyone or replace genetics. It's to be It works with that. So it's just another tool to kind of help guide, essentially.
So for somebody like you, Andrew, you're perhaps body condition scoring, you're probably dung scoring, you're all of those things that the cow is telling you, but this is the next level up and beyond that the cow's telling you even more.
Yeah, undoubtedly. If this is potentially showing, I don't know, let's take the example you said of an information pathways. Well, then you find out why and what can we do to then make it. It might not be so obvious as to what is going on. Like you used the term "give the cow another voice." I mean, I suppose when I was taught nutrition, the first thing I was taught is cows can't read. So it's, it doesn't matter what the computer says; it's what the cows are telling you. So while the computer's telling me one thing, if the cows are telling you something else, well, listen to the cows and go and find out why it's doing what it's doing. Not just go, well, it should be right. Just because it should be right, there's something going on.
Well, exactly. It's the kind of, we all know vitamin D is very important for health, for a number of things, for mammary gland development, for immunity, for increasing milk yield. We all know vitamin D is important in multiple processes. Nutritionists might say, this has got good levels of vitamin D in, or here's some vitamin D, you'll be fine. But if the cow doesn't have the genes expressed that can metabolize that vitamin D, giving them vitamin D might not be as beneficial as giving them a converted form of vitamin D. And that's where we can help. Say, actually, look, with this data, you might change what you recommend.
I guess what you're saying is, while, let's be honest, usually the reference I use and other people use would be Nassim. What was NRC? So Nassim, was it 2021, is it? That might say these are your levels. What you're saying is, well, actually, you might hit that level and it's still not being
exactly, yeah,
used enough, actually, based on this epigenetic data.
Yep.
Actually, you need to feed that little bit more than the recommendation for that cow to fully express what she needs to do.
It's like athletes, right? Swimmers and runners, they don't stick to the 2,000 calories that we're all recommended. Why would you have your high?
That's based on the average person, isn't it?
Exactly, and this is based on the average cow. So if you've got a really high performing cow, you're going to probably need to give them a bit more. And if they're telling you that through their gene expression, if they have stress or then there's other things going on there, why wouldn't you listen to that, essentially?
So if I'm just trying to think the way, if we want to do this, how do we do it?
So as in EpiHerd? Yeah. So you can contact anyone from Antler Bio team. There is a website. You can reach out directly to Andy or myself or Maria. We have a LinkedIn page as well. Basically, you can just inquire from that website or email, and you can talk to one of us. We can explain a bit more if a farmer wants to know more. But essentially, it's pretty simple. Once you're happy with what we offer, we send out a kit to you. You arrange a vet to come to take the blood, and then you send the package back to us, and then in a few weeks to months, you'll get your results.
I was going to say, how quick's turnaround?
Turnaround is, this has kind of taken off. We expected it to take off, but it has put it back a little bit. We're I think currently averaging about 35 days turnaround time from when we take the blood. So it's just over a month. We want to get that down to 2 weeks, ideally, but we've just had such high demand. It's just, we're trying to sequence as much as we can as quick as possible.
So how many cows are in your database now?
We've got about 3,000 now. I think we're maxing out basically, and we're just increasing capacity rapidly. So it's just, I guess it's the teething problems of a company that's.
And so where is this available, given that we do get listeners from all around the world in different places? Where is this available? If, I don't know, someone from the US or Australia or, different people listen, they heard this and went, oh, that sounds interesting. What about for those sorts of guys?
I'd love to New Zealand. It's just getting the packages over here without them defrosting so quickly. New Zealand is definitely somewhere where we're looking. At the moment, Finland, or basically all the Nordics, UK, Ireland. We do have, I think, an Italian farm starting. But basically all across Europe. We essentially want, there are logistics to that, right? Samples have to get basically in pristine condition as quick as possible. The kits we give out are very good at that. We use very high-end tubes. The tubes are insanely expensive, but they keep the RNA very, very good. So we get, it's always what you put in is what you get out. So you put good quality in, you get good quality data out. We have sequencing in Germany. We have sequencing in Denmark. They're the two we use mainly. So samples will get sent there, and then we can, rapidly return those results. But the turnaround time is improving pretty much every day. It's just dealing with that demand. But, yeah.
And again, as technology gets better, I mean, you're doing it with dairy cows.
Yep.
Any other livestock, beef cattle, more I'm thinking in particular, but I mean, what are the next steps? Beef
is the next logical one. We actually started in racehorses, believe it or not.
I can believe that, actually, the money that's involved.
Yeah. So racehorses is one where we started, and when we pivoted to dairy cows, it was during that COVID kind of period again. Like I said, all stories kind of have a COVID element to them. recent stories anyway. But yeah, beef would make sense. I mean, this is species agnostic, so it could be any species. We've done ducks, which is again really interesting. There's not much out there about ducks, but yeah, it is species agnostic, so it could be anything. But beef would be the logical one.
Well, and I suppose going back to my comment about Big Brother, what about athletes? Is that somewhere where potentially this can go?
Yeah, I mean, RNA sequencing, gene expression is very much, and epigenetics is very much in human research, right? It's just, and it's beginning to trickle down to other species, but the majority of studies are in human and mice models, usually for human disease. But there's so much we're missing from animals. If you think, I mean, when I did my PhD, the disease I looked at was IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. You'd use a mouse model that would mimic that disease, but it wouldn't replicate it perfectly. Whereas in horses, they commonly get idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. But the cost of doing studies on horses, on big animals, is prohibitive. But if you think in like in dairy or bovine, you get a lot of, I guess, like IBS problems, say in cows. You upset stomachs and things like that. Diarrhea, for example, things that are linked to the microbiome, perhaps, and gene expression and everything. And there might be data there that we have that could actually benefit human in the future. So it's a very interesting area with athletes for sure. You have again in the marginal gains in sports and athletes. I would love to look at, say, elite sports teams. Especially Arsenal. I'd love to. I'd love to look at the gene expression of their players. You
just want to try and find that way for them to win, is it? Right?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, a lot of sports teams use technology that's pretty advanced. There's a study in cows actually where they put VR headsets on them in Turkey, I think it was, where
yes.
That helped them with their stress, and they found that milk yield increased.
Yeah, I remember reading that one. Yes.
Yeah, it's things like that are, there's interesting science there that's not understood. Yeah, but I think there's so much to explore. Yeah.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm looking at the time, thinking I could just keep going, and I know I have been nerding out a little bit, so apologies to anybody listening, but genetics has always been something that has been absolutely fascinating to me all my life. But I guess, any last thoughts from yourself, Ian? Is there anything we haven't covered that you think we should talk about with the epigenetics, or do you think we've covered most bases?
I think we've probably covered a lot of bases. It's a fascinating subject. I'm still, it evolves. It evolves all the time. There's more learned about different genes that have regulation of by epigenetics. It's fascinating.
Well, I was just going to say, you look at genomics, what was the original chip? It was less than 1K, or I can't remember what it was. And now it's well over 50K, isn't it? Whatever, just as people understand things so much more. And that's only in genomics have only been 15 years, I think. Yeah, as I left Australia, not a bit more than that, then it started to come in, and so.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like sequencing. It was so expensive 20 years ago. It was just, I may be wrong, but I think it was about £1 million to sequence the genome, right?
And the time as well, as you say.
And the time, yeah, and the size of the machines and everything. Just like computers. When the computers used to take up a massive room, and now we're on them now on our laps, kind of thing. It's like that with sequencers. You could sequence things where the chip was tiny, and now can do hundreds of samples at once. It's come down a lot in price. It is still expensive technology, but it will inevitably come down. And then, there's just.
So, but you say that's a bit like, you talk about computers. It's a bit like I say to my kids, I remember the first computer at school, the BBC Model B, and it was one computer for the whole school, and it was set up in the staff room. We went up in pairs to do educational games. One was selling ice cream, I seem to remember. And now they're just everywhere, and they have iPads, and they're taught computing, and it's just yeah, and that's in 40 years, what a difference that's made. So again, we're not even there yet.
Yeah, no, my 3-year-old still swipes things and things that it'll interact, and he's confused when it doesn't change. Or it's
well, yes. When my youngest was born, the oldest was 2.5, and he'd been used to Netflix, and Mum had turned her Wi-Fi data off because she didn't want it all eaten while he came into hospital. So he saw his little brother and was like, "Oh yeah, all right." Within 2 minutes, was bored, and this just shows that he's a child of his generation. He was given the phone, and then next thing was, my Netflix doesn't work. And you're just like, well, there's a child of your generation, isn't it? So
yeah, and that's how, the future for kids now, I wonder what that'll be, right? With AI and everything like that, it'll probably look a very different future than our generation. And it's
so Sarah, last thoughts from yourself. 'Cause I'm sorry, we are in nerding out a little.
You're nerding out, both of you. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to try and bring it back to my level, which is, I guess, sort of for many years as advisors, we've been talking about cows not reaching their genetic potential.
Yep.
And I think that epigenetics really starts opening the windows on the why, and actually allows farmers to look at those marginal gains.
Exactly.
And
yeah, because you've got, it can. This technology can help whether you've put genetics in, whether you've gone that route or not. It's basically what you've got. How can we maximize that potential? And it really is just that. It's given an additional insights that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Well, I just like to say thank you very much, Ian. It's been fantastic. I always thought epigenetics was purely in utero, and it's obviously not. There is more to it than that, and that was the whole point of this podcast, isn't it? And whenever we do this, it's to try and hopefully we learn, and then the people listening can learn from it, because this kind of stuff is coming. There are people who go, "Oh, I don't want to know," but this kind of stuff is coming, and the more you have the opportunity to learn about it from the likes of ourselves or others, then it makes you more aware of the future and be able to have a conversation a little bit more about it, because you understand that a little bit more on that subject. But yes, as I say, I'm sure we probably have, but I know we've probably got a bit too technical at times, but that's what it's all about. But Ian, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy, and I know I could just keep talking on this one, because I say genetics has always been an interest of mine. So really, I guess on that one, I'd like to say thank you very much, and it's a goodbye from me.
Oh, I'll chip in first. Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Chewing the Cud podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Sarah Bolt are personal and may not be the views of Kingshay Farming and Conservation Limited and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Chewing the Cud Limited, visit www.chewingthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.